So while we're waiting for the guy who's in charge, oh, here he is.
I was going to kick it off with you with a question for you.
A question for me?
Yeah.
With no advance warning to
So
me?
I remember once upon a time.
No advance warning?
Yeah. Once upon a
Shame
time,
on you.
you used to say that we were going to see ILP of 32. What happened?
Oh, that one's easy. That was very easy. What? Oh, speak louder, you can't hear me in the back. Did you hear Trev's question?
Sorry.
You heard Trev's question, but you didn't hear my answer, sir.
Right.
So Trev speaks louder than I do.
That's it. Trevor's looking out.
Oh, Trevor was projecting in the right direction and I was projecting in the wrong direction.
Correct.
Okay, so you all heard that Trevor asked me why we haven't seen IOP of 32 when I was saying IOP of 32. Was I saying IOP of 32?
Yeah, well,
I thought I was saying IOP of 100 or something.
Let's just say you're a factor of 10 off.
I was saying IOP, I don't know why I was, maybe I was just feeling...
So what happened? Get to the answer.
No, so the answer is very simple, you know. It's, so let's look at the Pentium M chip, which is my favorite current example to illustrate the point. The Pentium M chip had 77 million transistors. How many were in the second level cache?
Probably half.
No, not half. Half of them would have been okay. 50 million of the 70 million. That was 77 million transistors. 50 million went into the L2 cache. Okay? So they do a shrink and they work their asses off, and then the Pentium M2 had 140 million. How many went into the L2 cache?
Lots, I'm curious.
110. Okay? So they double the size of the number of transistors on the chip, and they give peanuts to the processor. It all goes into the L2 cache. Why? It's easy to put in the L2 cache. Boom, boom. Now you've doubled the size of the L2 cache. We only saw 5% improvement in performance of that second chip. Well, clearly, 110 million transistors instead of 50 million, so there's a lot fewer L2 misses you get, so you get the 5% improvement. And then they say, we've doubled the number of transistors on the chip, and we only see 5% improvement. ILP is clearly dead. ILP will continue to be dead as long as we don't put resources into making it better. There's plenty we can do. There's plenty of headroom. In fact, I was talking to one of the people here in the audience, and he said, you know, I got some insight into how to get to 100 ILP. And I say, fantastic, you know. But you need the resources. We tell graduate students ILP is dead, and they don't work on it. Instead, they work on some silly tweak for multi-core.
I didn't say it was dead. I just asked you why we haven't seen much improvement.
And I told you, because in order to get improvement, you have to apply resources. And as long as you don't apply resources, you won't get improvement. So there's no reason why we can't be a lot more than what we are now.
So if there's a competitive advantage, why hasn't somebody taken that opportunity?
Oh, there are.
So actually,
can anybody mix it
anybody can
up?
mix in, even the Bulgarian.
Even
Where were you yesterday? We missed you at the,
I know.
on the beach in the
I was
boat.
trying to work, you know, for a
You were trying to work, right.
Forget it.
So, by the way, that's interesting. I wonder if Anna knows that her new name is Work.
No, actually, we'll talk about the top line. Now, thank you for making the good claim for FPGAs, because they, you know, use most of the resources to compute, and not much resources. Okay, there is some DRAM, there is some, you know, configuration memory, but most of the area is spent on computational resources.
So actually, there's some work going on now at Microsoft. In fact, my younger colleague, Derek Chu, in fact, they presented a paper at ISCA. Andrew Putnam was the first author. And not only did they set a record for the number of authors on a single paper, I think that's something like 16, was that about right? Yeah. Doug Berger is the internal Microsoft guy who's pushing it. And what they're gonna do, so I don't know, they may end up with ILP that's out of sight. Using, what they've got is, let's see, so in the keynote that Bruce just gave, he had one picture there where he had a two-dimensional array of memory cells, you know, 4 ported memory cells going off in the 4 directions. Then he had processors around it. Well, if you replace those memory things with FPGAs that talk to each other, and each one has its own processor, and then the processor has a piece of work, ships it to the FPGA, and they can do things a lot, you know, faster than software. That may improve the ILP dramatically, I don't know. You know.
So, isn't industry still looking at ILP?
So very good. So no, I was going to say that and I forgot. You know, you're good. You're good. So when you can be old and forgetful, it's good to have young guys that feed you. So you know that. You know that Intel is very strongly looking at. You don't know that. So of course you know that. Yeah. And, by the way, this ILP of 32. So Yogi consults for this company. A guy named Oscar Menser, who's one of Mike Flint's students. They must, they talk about these astronomical numbers, right?
I'm not just, in certain areas, it's not a problem.
Yes, for specific applications, for specific workloads.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to solve a polynomial and use Horner's rule for solving that polynomial, you remember Horner's rule, of course. You probably will not get a whole lot of ILP, right? Gotcha. No?
I agree. I mean,
no. So I think
I wouldn't do it in parallel. If I wanted to build a server, yeah, I can keep the processors busy and the pipelines busy. If I wanted to do graphics, I can get things busy. If I wanted to do inverter matrix on a supercomputer, I can keep things busy. But just in sort of general purpose desktop computing, there's not much going on. And in fact, the fact that you offload stuff to these application-specific engines means there's even less left for the general purpose core.
So I'm not sure I know what a general purpose core is anymore. You're talking about a Berkeley RISC processor of 1979? You know, that had 1 beta type integer? You know? So is the floating point unit part of the general purpose core?
Well, it sort of is. Yeah.
Oh, good. How about the GPU? Is that part of the general purpose core?
Probably not at the moment.
Why not? Why not? What's the difference between a GPU doing a specialized task and a floating point? You try to do floating point by taking 2 integers.
I'm not arguing with you. I don't know what you're getting upset about.
I'm not upset at all. I'm having fun. I'm having fun, you know. That's the way I have fun.
So wasn't the original question, how do you get 32 ILP single thread?
So the first way is my first answer. You devote resources. You tell graduate students, when we did the branch predictor, you know, people said you're not going to get anything out of branch prediction. They said, oh my God, you can't. You know, if you tell graduate students that it's done, they won't work on it. It'll be done.
But industry's looking at it.
That's right. Industry is looking at it, and so if you tell graduate, so maybe that's the answer. Send your graduate students to industry for the summer, and they'll come back and work on IoT. Maybe that's the answer. So by the way, it's supposed to be interactive with everybody, not just.
But again, to respond back what this
Go ahead.
What a general purpose GPU or what a general purpose processor is nowadays, right? The thing is, like, if you see, for example, the ILP, then like GPUs have actually like workloads that are pretty much like full focus was in the past, and you have essentially like a lot of like threads that you're starting to schedule on that and then get to work there as if you would do that, or but you need compilers, you need programs to be actually fitting that model, which is I think the hard part. The programmer's fault, of course.
I was just about to say that. That's right. Absolutely.
So
No, but how you gonna, so I got a question for you. How are you gonna get, well, what the hell, I'll toss it real quick. How are you gonna get performance out of these, in fact, we talked a little bit about this yesterday's keynote, that we talked about programmability. And, in fact, I hit Tor with the question, when you mean programmability, do you mean at the assembly language level, or do you mean at the high level? And most of these programmers they don't even want to work at the high level, they want to work at the high level, you know? So how are you going to get anything out of the underlying fabric if the people writing the code are, you know, clueless about all of the above?
Yeah, well, the problem is that if you have your Ninja programmers,
I'm sorry?
if you have Ninja programmers, people that
I'm
understand.
sorry, you have something programmers.
Ninja.
Huh?
Ninja.
Oh, ninja programmers.
You know the bits by first.
I don't know what a ninja programmer is. You have to, I'm old, so that, I don't.
They're very skilled.
They're very,
They're very skilled. Oh, and we're gonna find these people?
Yeah, well, this is the problem, the skill is the problem. So, but I think that there's a lot of language like or software available that people have developed over the decades that is like outliving computer architectures that they have been originally built upon, and people want to reuse it. So the problem is, do we want to have everybody rewrite that stuff for a specific machine?
Their stuff, what stuff?
Yeah, well, all the application software that has been written, all the...
Depends, do we want 32 ILP or do we not?
Okay, good question.
The question is, do you want to gain performance or you just want to run your code? If you want to just run your code, then you do not rewrite that. But if you want to gain performance, you know.
I think the main problem that we have at the moment is that in the past it was easy, for example, to get better performance for your applications that you had by just getting a new computer architecture and getting a new PC, and all of a sudden everything ran twice as fast as before. We don't have that luxury anymore, and I think that was what Prof also mentioned in his, that this is an item where we just run into a wall at the moment.
What wall are we running into?
That we cannot scale down definitely subatomically.
They're not scaled, so it's broken down for CMOS.
No, so what are we talking? We're talking about the feature size?
The feature size and some others.
So what's the feature size now? 90 angstroms?
No, it's about,
No, I don't talk in terms of nanometers, because I can't wrap my brain around a nanometer, but an angstrom I understand, see? So I say, because that's what we measure these molecules in angstroms, right? So 90 angstroms.
22 nanometers is probably where people are right now. Maybe
220 angstroms. You know that, right?
I don't know.
That angstroms are 10 to the minus 10 and nanometers are 10 to the minus 9? No, you see, if you taught angstroms, everybody in this room has had a high school course in chemistry where they were taught the word angstrom. So they grok the concept. You're not going to be able to make the feature size half of an electron.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So is that what you're talking about? That
Yes.
the feature size is getting so small?
A number of things. A number of things.
So there's a number of
The
things we
biggest
may want
thing
to do.
actually-
In fact, there was a paper that came out of, there was a paper that came out of UPC, Barcelona, back in the days when Matteo and Antonio used to talk together. And what it said was, you're into the pipeline and you do renaming. And what's renaming all about? Identifying a register in the reorder buffer where you're going to stick the result. They allocated that register at rename time. They didn't need the register until after the result was produced. So all this energy being wasted, all that time, with the increased reorder buffer size, why? Because they did it wrong. So these guys did it right. They said, no, we'll identify that we need the register, we'll give it a tag, a number, but we won't allocate the resource until we need the resource. So a lot of things that can be done that nobody's going to do unless, their attention is drawn to it. And the conventional wisdom, you heard my talk, multi-core mega nonsense, is drawn to the nonsense associated.
There is a problem with scale. Do you agree with that? In our current CMOS tech, there maybe we'll come up with some other inexpensive technology that replaces.
There is
right
a problem coming down the road with CMOS, right? We cannot go on.
Well, we could go on for quite a way. We're running out of, it's the return on investment that's going to stop this. We've sort of gone past the cheapest bit for.
So that is certainly true that we've gone past the cheapest spit, yes. Return on investment is not,
So.
and it's also the case, rectangles don't look like rectangles anymore when you get down to those sizes.
So, what are you gonna do about it?
So you're asking me,
I
am I
don't
going
think
to...
renaming something a little bit different is the order of magnitude.
So I like this program, so I would certainly, so I want to, we'll have ninja programmers, thanks to Paul, who will program at the level of understanding the microarchitecture of the chip, thanks to Thor. And if we do those two things, yeah, I think we can go a long way. Right? So I'm thinking of, the FPGAs, the GPU as a accelerator, it's a functional unit. All these things are going to help. The kicker is what Thor said yesterday, is how do you program, how do you make use, my first bullet, I would start freshmen understanding all levels of the hierarchy, so that the algorithms people understand the microarchitecture, and you can evolve a programming language that can take advantage of this.
It seems that software developers don't want to understand.
That's correct. Software, that's right.
My observation.
That is absolutely right.
I think we've been saying for 10 years, they have to think about it, and it doesn't seem like they've started to think about it.
So I was in the audience. I was in the audience on a panel at IPDPS a couple years ago, and I made my comment about algorithm people talking about microarchitects, and we went through the people on the panel one by one, and every one of them agreed you'll never get algorithm people to talk to microarchitects.
Great.
Huh?
Great.
I don't want to embarrass, they're not here to defend themselves, but the people on that panel were big names in our field, So you'll never get an algorithm person to talk to her. By the way, that's not true. I'm a microarchitect. Charles Liserson is an algorithm guy, and we were together at a meeting in Seattle for some other purpose about a month ago, and we spent most of our time at that meeting, just the two of us talking. So I've got an existing counterexample to it. But if you do that, you're never going to solve the problem. I think Tor is right. These software people aren't biting into it. By the way, I think we need I think, in fact, you might be interested in this. I think we need two interfaces. We need an interface for the clueless, because 98% of them are not ninja.
Oh, we have that, yeah.
And we need an interface at the hardware level that we've got enough ninja programmers that will program it that way.
Yeah, we have that already, which is like OpenCL, for example, which is...
OpenCL solves the problem.
It doesn't solve the problem, it is just one step on the software level to get access to the hardware.
One step, yeah. If I want to run a marathon, I have to run the first 5 yards.
You have to
Before I run
before I
the second 5 yards. You think OpenCL is really...
No, I don't think it
Okay, good.
necessarily has it. I don't say that. It's one step in the direction where we want to go, and I think ultimately the problem is that we have a software stack like compilers, etc., that map the problems that people have in their problem space. Everybody's an expert with something, and some other thing. And people that are have a problem that they want to solve with a programming language typically use the tool that they use that they're familiar with and map it to the hardware. And then it's the job of the compiler, etc., to map it to the hardware in the best possible manner to get the performance out of it.
So my view would be to let to put pragmas into the programming language, have the compiler be able to use those pragmas to generate calls to procedures that are in the runtime system that are tied closely to the chip. And that runtime system code tied closely to the chip will get information off of the chip. And by tying all these things together, maybe we can get the ILP experience.
But the thing is, I'm not that...
But I think that towards the point about the programmability, I think is absolutely where the biggest problem is. That the cell processor, beautiful, disaster, right? Why was it a disaster? People couldn't program it. And in fact, Peter Hofstee said at the get-go that if you're going to make the cell processor perform, you're going to have to understand how these things work together. He goes to a company site, a client site, and they beat him up. How can you expect us to... You're talking about moving data around in memory, Those people should have been at Bruce's talk today. They would have stayed sound asleep throughout, because nothing he said do they care about. They want it to be up high, where they don't have to worry about it.
Well, if you.
I think that's a
This
problem.
is actually a big thing, like this is taught in this, in my opinion, a very seminal talk in so far for the software person, because typically what a software person optimized for is today's system with a relatively slow storage, back-end, and then having for example multiple levels of cache and everything to take care of the performance. However, if you have a subsystem that is like memory and that just stores it, when you need the hard drive, for example, why you need a lot of other things, and you have like more terabytes of memory available, and this changes to a lot like the regular optimization strategies that software is doing today, both in compilers and in the applications to actually unlock the system capabilities.
If you believe that,
I mean, you want an interface that you can tell 1 million people how to use, right?
so that's the problem. That's why I think we want two interfaces.
So the problem I have with two interfaces is, what does that translate to? Just libraries? Like,
You already have that in different programs.
So,
You've got basic, you've
So,
got C.
that's all I'm doing is pushing off the problem, the hard problem, which is that piece of software that takes the clueless down to the.
because the clueless want flexibility and generality.
The clueless just wants to get their job done, yeah, which is write the payroll program for the,
Yeah, they have a problem. I look at them as like, they're sort of, I don't know, this is overly flattering to them, artists who are trying to paint something on a canvas as quickly as possible. And they
yeah,
maximum
in fact,
flexibility.
that's right, and so that,
And if your paintbrushes are limited, can they actually draw the picture they want? That's the analogy there.
If we define ILP with the simple view that I have a sequential algorithm, I'm not even talking about programming language or anything, just a sequential algorithm. ILP, we break it down into some instructions and we look at the instructions. What's the limiting factor? The control dependencies, data dependencies. How you identify control dependencies? How you identify data dependencies? So my question would be, do you think the ISA level that we use today is capable of expressing? If you have ninja programmers, you have whatever, they know the architecture, they know everything, but is your ISA capable of expressing the vast amount of data dependencies and control dependencies that needs to be understood by the hardware to identify what can execute in it? So today, what we do, well, we rely on the memory to perform the data dependence communication. So we break it there. So we propagate it until a store, because there's a flow that matches, and we proceed beautifully with simple ideas. So my question to the panel is, do you think the ISA research should be revitalized to come up with better expressing the dependence control and the data dependence needs for expressing high level ILP?
No.
Short answer.
I think
Go ahead, I was going to say something simple rather than.
I think the main problem is, from my point of view, like seeing for example how the software is written is typically written for a scalar architecture, and due to certain architectures being more popular, people are familiar about for example x86 or processors of that kind. Whereas for example in other spaces, for example, totally different types of processors with VLIW architecture actually have been done for a while, but again, you cannot it's hard to write compilers for them and exercise them appropriately. Whereas, for example, there were decades spent on optimization, for example, for that scalar model, and this is something that you would have to rebuild all the time. So I think the question is, if you change the ISA model completely, then of course you throw away all that crude experience that talks about the software developers and compiler writers, everything have for the time.
So that's the industry perspective, and I'll give the academic perspective, which is that's the response you get from the program committee when you submit a paper that tries to do what you're saying. Because I've tried some of that recently with colleagues, and basically the community says you're changing the ISA, we cannot have that because there's this huge investment.
But then if you view the hardware as the interpreter of the ISA, right, and my description that comes to me that I need to perform these operations has a top limit of 8 ILP, you're not gonna get 32 ILP no matter what kind of hardware you have. So you have to be able to express.
How are you gonna do it? Give me an example.
Well, actually, this is, if you think about the GPU programming, or the GPU model, it's actually another direction. People don't see it that way, but it's another direction in ISA research. And they're trying to do what the LIW couldn't express by using the concept of these threads which are running, but it is an ISA change.
Well, what's interesting about GPUs is they change their ISA every generation, and they basically jig the code. So they have this intermediate representation that stays stable.
So the question is, or is there an ISA that can express a broad spectrum of programs parallelism that a compiler or ninja programmer can translate an algorithm into? Or can we come up with a model that's going to do this? I think that.
Well, there's an enabling technology that's coming out. I didn't show pictures of it, just I was expecting somebody to ask a question, but Micron announced this automata processor thing, you know, because they've got this stack in the hybrid memory cube, and the bottom level actually has a whole lot of white space. Controllers don't require a whole lot of resources, so there's room left over, and they're actually putting processors down on that lowest level. And they're calling it the automata processor because, you know, I think the people who originally wanted to do it were all PIM people, processing and memory people, like students of Peter Kogan, for example. And so they want to do things that look like cellular automata and whatnot. But I think that's going to enable, just that infrastructure itself will enable a whole lot of research, because what they showed, they showed it at supercomputing, I think a few months back, was like a DIMM form factor with 8 of these chips, each of which has its own processor at the bottom. Now that's really interesting, because now you've got very densely packed computing things. You've got a processor with 8 memories stacked on top of it, right next to another and another and another. I mean, that's a heck of an interesting form factor, especially if you can have a DIMM and a DIMM and a DIMM and a DIMM. I think there's a lot of room for really low power computing, because clearly you don't want a high power thing in a stack, is getting the heat out of the way. But I think there's room for experimenting there. I think there's a whole lot of room for research and looking at things that would be amenable to that form factor. You know, really dense computing where the memory is very close, but you can't dissipate a lot of power.
I think that's also.
And so some of the research that you ought to do is to read the literature, which nobody in this field seems to want to do. So I would argue that what Bruce has just described is the soul of the CEDAR project, which was done at the University of Illinois 35 years ago, in which what Dave Cook did is he didn't, the automorphic or whatever Murphy is. So my guess is Richard Murphy must be behind all this stuff I was saying. Used to work for Sandia, he took a job at Micron, and this is coming out of Micron. It's data flow, but the data flow node is not a multiplier. The data flow node is what Cook would call a, what would he call it? I can't remember, complex.
Macro.
I'm sorry?
Macro architecture.
So it's a macro kind of data flow, that's right. So people would write code in a language called paraphrase, which was a parallel Fortran kind of thing. And his global controller, and so his paraphrase compiler would translate this code into these large data flow nodes with all the dependencies between them. And then the hardware would take these nodes and ship them to the individual thingy, which is his automorphic processor. The number 8, he said, this automorphic processor was 8 processors, 8 memories with a full processor between it, and it would execute. And when it got done, it would ship the results, which were enabling other data flow nodes to then be scheduled. And so at the low level, his original thought was 4,000. So 4,000 divided by 8 is 500. So you've got 2 to the 12, 2 to the 3rd is 2 to the 9th. So 512 of these things, he called them clusters. And each cluster would work on its piece of work. And these pieces of work could go parallel our data flow. Data flow is the way to get ILP. In fact, all the high performance chips out there, not the graphics thing, but the general purpose chips, are doing a restricted form of data flow. And there's your more than 32 In fact, that's
Still
it,
waiting.
bring back, well, you, in fact, you were a student there. I guess you were
Yeah,
gone by the time.
I did
Steve-
paraphrase, I know, it's not what Bruce is talking about. He's talking about a little automata that's stuck in a memory.
Fine, so that's a matter of,
Which
which
is-
is again scale, you know?
Which
The point is that
So
you
you
can
take-
they're
you take-
exporting the interface. They're making it so that you can build your own ASIC and talk to this thing. You're not stuck with that logic layer that they give you. You can build your own. The whole point is that you've got this brand new infrastructure where you can do what the hell ever you want.
And
And
how are you
so
gonna
if
be-
you want to do that funky thing, go
And-
wild.
yeah, and how you gonna be-
The whole point is that
how you
you
gonna
can
be able
put
to-
these things together, but you have to
And how you gonna be able to
load-
talk, and how you gonna be able to talk to these things? How you gonna be able to talk to these things?
Well, what I'm saying is,
Yeah,
it's
control.
up to you.
Yeah, but the thing is, it goes back to the software. I think that
You wait a while, it's up to you.
Well, how do you think supercomputers work? You've got
You've gotta have
you've got
instructions.
hundreds of thousands of cores that
Sure.
are talking over a network. And yet they work.
And what's driving
Because
the
we
code,
Yeah,
right?
you've got to write the code to do
And the
it.
code is gonna be written in the new ISA that Sonair wants to,
Well, I don't know. He was asking if it's possible or worthwhile to do ISA research. And I said, yeah, there's actually an interesting infrastructure in which you can build whatever
okay,
you
so
want.
I missed that. So you're agreeing with Sonair that it is important to do ISA research because we've got this existence or future existence of these
I
automorphic.
just said that this is an infrastructure that enables it.
there's one item though, like typically the reason why we have this IoT problem is essentially that the software that we have is like fundamentally a synchronous execution model on the CPUs. Like the GPUs, for example, or some of the special purpose processors, like those programming memory, are fundamentally asynchronous execution models that are need to be expressed somehow. One of the items that we have at the moment is that a lot of the how you program an asynchronous execution model is the biggest item. We have a few standards at the moment.
Yeah, what?
We have a few standards at the moment to do that. One of them is also open, the various graphics APIs, which is one of the items, or OpenCL. But I think this is also where we have to preserve both the properties of synchronous and asynchronous model, and have compilers essentially being able to target either one or the other, independent of the ISA.
Yeah, the real issue is, actually we have 100-fold IoT right now. We get it by taking the algorithm, writing a parallel program, some sort, either a GPU, CUDA, whatever, or some other MPI, and we compose this algorithm, then executing in these nodes, and if you think about it, each node is executing, let's say, 3-4 instructions every cycle. You're getting hundreds of instructions executing at the time. The issue is, can we start with a sequential program and have the means to represent it in such a way that at the ISA layer, that this is done automatically.
Can you send me that 100 ILPs thing?
I mean, like,
Where is it? Send me the text, show me the program. There are some, there are whole classes of algorithms where you can get tons of parallelism, right?
well, I'm not talking about
There are some in which you cannot. You can provably not get any parallelism.
That's true. If the algorithm is
Whoa. What is it provably not getting any parallelism right? From the algorithm or from the
Yes.
process?
From the problem.
From the problem. Because the Horner's rule example, which you did the right thing. You said that I would not do Horner's rule. I would do what Sonair would do, which would be to parallelize.
You can
it
still
into
only
a
make it.
different algorithm.
It's difficult to see that you can parallelize it beyond just building a long tree for that thing.
I'm sorry?
You can take your polynomial and evaluate it in a logarithm.
Right. So?
It's not 100 ILP.
It depends on the size.
The first step, you lose
depends
half
on
your
the size of
ILP.
the
The next step, you
depends on the
lose
size of the
another.
polynomial, right?
Yeah? What?
Depends on the size of the polynomial. Could be 100 ILP.
Okay, let's suppose you can do 100 in the bottom level. What are you going to do in the next level? With this logarithm? It's a question for you. Okay. Let's go.
So
50. And the next one's going to be 25 and then about 12. So you just even evaluating something that's logarithmic.
So my cup of coffee is half empty, huh? I'd rather think that it's half full. Okay. Ah, good, we got somebody out there. Two people out there.
I've noticed that you silently neglected the Powerball problem.
I'm
So
sorry?
that you silently neglected the Powerball problem. So
I
it's not that you
I neglected the power,
you neg-
the power wall. Oh,
so imagine that you
I didn't neglect it, it just hasn't come up until now.
so even if there will be processors with 100 ILP per core, for example, will be this sustainable?
I can't hear you, just speak up please. I'm old, my ears don't work. And I can't get a hearing aid because my vanity won't allow me.
Even if there will be processors with tens of ILP per core, will be this sustainable from a power perspective? Or all the
You can run them slower and save power.
You can what?
If you could get your 100, you could actually run them slower and save power.
Well,
why to run them slow?
Just save power.
now he's talking about the frequency trade-off.
I mean, what you're sort of implicitly saying is you've got to spend more energy to get things done faster.
No, but
You-
why not to improve also your performance? I mean, you have some performance goals.
So you want to be able to improve performance and reduce power. Is that right?
No, I'm not talking of reducing power. I mean, if, a more fundamental question, if this kind of processors will be sustainable from a power perspective.
Well, it depends on how much each core actually uses, right? The thing is, what do you use the power for? I think the main argument is essentially, well, the main argument today is that if you have like a desktop CPU, for example, then you have like a couple of cores in there, but there's a lot of like logic on the core that is doing like nothing else than like keeping appearances, being a synchronous execution model, like the ISA that everybody loves and hates. And then, of course, this is mapped into some other processor architecture that underneath that nobody knows about, and then being executed on like the various cores and utilizing functional units that do draw power, optimize performance, and then do something faster than you could before. Now, if you could, for example, get going with that logic and simplify things and have the execution units do actually execution, which is what the GPU is doing. Like we have a shader array, for example, with like thousands of execution units that are working in parallel. Then of course you have much more logic actually dedicated to actually doing something instead of supporting the doing.
You have to change the programming model, so the legacy code will not
Well,
be-
what is the programming model? Nobody programs. Like x86 was done at a time when people were still programming in assembly language, so it was something that was easy to understand, relatively easy to program for, even if you wanted to do assembly language. And today, what use people mostly is C++, they use managed languages, they use JavaScript and other things, or Java. And it's not really the program model that x86 or ARM or anything else is. This is something for the compiler writers to deal with typically. It's about what is the program model that an application programmer sees and can use and make and can understand in a way that can apply to his problem.
So I think he doesn't see anything with the applications program. This power question, so you know better than I.
No, I'm just wondering.
No, you do know better, you know this stuff better than I do. So the power, clearly there's a power problem on the chip, and I have a solution for that.
Which is?
I will in a moment. The question I'm asking is, if my solution involves distributing the stuff on multiple chips, multiple chips, that's right, does the power problem go away? See, if it does, then
No, I mean, that's an ill-formed question.
well, not the first time that I've ill-formed a question for you, for sure. What I'd like to do, so...
You need more constraints to answer that question. Yes,
Okay.
you can reduce power, run the damn thing slower.
No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to reduce power,
Okay.
run it slower. What I want to do is, so his point about power on the chip is relevant. I have a solution for that, so you want to know the solution. The solution is the American game of football. Okay. We have a field goal kicker. he's good at one thing, kicking field goals.
You have a few.
98%.
Right here, by the way.
98% of the game, he's sitting on the bench, powered off, not contributing to the power column. We've got the old Chicago Bears. I don't know how much you know about American game of football, but the old Chicago Bears had a defensive tackle named William Perry. They called him the refrigerator. 50% of the time, when the offense was on the field, he was sitting on the bench, powered off. If the Bears were 1 foot from the goal line, they power up William Perry, bring him in, he'd score a touchdown. The point is, with the number of transistors we're going to have on a chip, 50 billion, and already we've got papers talking about dark silicon. I think dark silicon is a feature. You've got all these things on the chip that are only used when they're really needed. Right? So what I'd like to do is take this multi-core chip, which already we can't power up, you say I'm neglecting power, and say, okay, what I'm going to do is maybe have one of them on a chip, or two of them on a chip, or whatever, and now have lots of chips. And so my question is, if I do that, and I can communicate properly between them, and the programming model is going to have to get into that, can I get rid of the power? Can I make the power problem go away if I can do that?
I don't think you make it go away. You're not even sure that solves the whole thing.
Why not?
Is it
Well,
still
you
a factor
basically
of 10? Is it still a factor of 10 roughly versus on-chip versus off-chip communication?
Yeah, I'm
That was
not
used
sure
as
why you
But
want to.
power is a matter of this density thing, right?
The problem's coming up with those refrigerators, right? What are the refrigerators?
So how many transistors are we going to have on a chip in a few years?
There's a lot of transistors.
50
it's not clear
billion,
what to do.
50 billion. You know?
But it's not clear.
Well,
what
some
to
of it's
do.
going to be FPGAs, right?
I don't think it's still, you have to configure them to do something.
That's correct. And the assumption is that the configuration time is small relative to the duty cycle.
So you've got floating point units, which can be floating point well.
That's correct.
So what are the
And that's a
other-
refrigerator. That is the first refrigerator,
Okay,
right?
so what are the other things that are gonna get this 32 ILP out of the sequential programming model? What are the other refrigerators that can do that?
I mean, if you look at a system on a chip, like on your cell phone, for instance, lots of parts of it is turned off at any one time. Just because of the usage scenario,
You don't want to burn your ear off. I understand.
No, you're probably not going to do infrared, maybe you just do that. Maybe you're not going to do Wi-Fi and Bluetooth at the same time, so.
Whatever they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi.
But still, even like if you have dark silicon, of course you can always switch off, but you still have to pay for the transistors. So
Yeah.
if you have to really...
No, so the transistors are there. We're going to have chips with 50 billion transistors on it.
They're very expensive transistors.
Huh? Oh, so we're back to the industry model.
Well,
That's right.
okay, so the academic model is, it's all free, let's use it.
No,
I
the
like it.
academic model is that if you don't push the envelope, you're going to be doing tomorrow what we did yesterday.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, as mentioned, like, the cell phones already have a lot of dark silicon in usual operation. This is like, but you also like have to like a transistor batch in might be $50 billion, might be 100 billion, 100 billion transistors, 200 billion. But
Well, no, so we're not going to have 200 billion on a chip. That's why I talk in terms of angstroms.
Yeah, okay.
So they say that 50 billion. But I got people that tell me that with 50 billion transistors on a chip, we could have 10 million cores on the chip. 50 million divided by 10, 50 billion divided by 10 million? That's 5,000 transistors per core.
Yeah.
So the future is 50 billion transistor chips, and we're going to populate that chip with, 10 million Intel 4004s.
Yeah.
See? I mean, that's silly, right?
Yeah.
So, we do have a limit, let's say we don't go to a new technology. So the limit's 50 billion. So we power off, most of it. If I can do, which is my question to Trevor, if I can chip, and I'll have very little, on any one chip at any one time, there'll be not a lot going on, but there's multiple chips. Is that a viable
Why
system?
not? But I can't think why you want to do that.
I want to cure cancer, or I want to predict tsunamis. And it's not just throughput, it's latency. And I've got to be able to have all these things that are doing this 100 ILP, that, or for you 32 ILPs, but, in order to be able to do that. Yeah. We already have, a lot of physics is already, the Anton machine that David Elliott Shaw did, a lot of physics and chemistry is being done already. I want to do more. I'd like to figure out, as I say, cure cancer, so I can live forever.
But with the 50 billion transistors for other things, like at the moment we have like a lot of stuff is already memory on the chip. As you mentioned before, on your a lot of that is cache, more or less. And of course, you could in essence have the main memory on the chip itself.
Cache is dark silicon.
Yeah.
The access is one cache.
So you have that already to some degree, and of course you can.
In fact, except it's not dark silicon because it is powered up.
Well, it's leaking, yeah.
But that's the problem. That's the problem with the enormous amount of cash.
Well, that's probably why I'm looking at you.
So who wants to jump in? Ah, good. Somebody jump in.
So, I have a comment regarding the programmer's life and the talk about the algorithm talking to the microarchitecture. So, taking the example of OpenCL, which is supposed to be portable, functional portable as well as performance portable, but that's hardly the case. A programmer who writes a program in OpenCL, he has to write the program which targets that specific platform like Intel, NVIDIA, AMD and all that. So my question is, how many versions of the algorithm that talk to microarchitecture he needs to write on a day? And at the end of the day, the managers and the professors talk about the productivity. So it's like one line of code per day. If you do this kind of algorithm which talks to the microarchitecture, very hard.
Yeah, unfortunately, sorry, to cut it here. Like, unfortunately, I didn't give my keynote to it yet, so I would have at least some answer. I'm not sure if everybody agrees here. Is this the answer at all or not? But again, my point of view, it is something that there's a microarchitecture that we still are exposed to, and of course, the macro architecture that we are programming for the GPU or any accelerator is fundamentally like the difference between a synchronous execution model and asynchronous execution model. And we have a function block or an execution unit that is good at some things, not all things. We have another one that is also good at some things, and we are used to, but not good at other things. And I think best thing is not to make one look like the other. It's making sure that we can use both of them whenever we need them for the purpose wherever they're good at. OpenCL as an example is of course one first step that has been done by the industry to like have some sort of high-level abstraction model from what was there before, which was some proprietary interfaces, or doing, for example, some compute over like the graphics APIs, which were like really, really bad things, but you actually could do compute on them. So, but it's not the last step, or not the only step to do.
So, can I say something?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the free lunch is over, and programmers should start using their brain. And the optimal algorithms, the number of them will be equal to the number of platforms you want to map it to. And maybe you should even go back and understand the problem and find another algorithmic way to solve it for a particular platform. Unfortunately, if you want to have the best performance.
Yeah, but that's the hard. That's hard part.
So right now you need to have one per platform.
Yes.
And people have studied that and seen that like 10x difference in performance. But so that's like an interesting area for research, right? So I mean, some people are, I guess, proposing like auto tuners, where you take the higher level code, maybe write it at a higher level than OpenCL, and then you sort of specialize it to the particular hardware platform. But how effective that will be in the general case, I think is yet to be seen. But for certain classes, that works well. So I mean, that's an interesting area of research, I would say.
Okay, Trevor's building this guy. Go ahead. You can call him people.
No,
I'm just laid back. You're running it.
No, I don't. I agree.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
I mean, it's a cost. You can't have everybody to
no, so a couple guys want to talk.
Okay.
So go ahead and talk. One of you guys talk.
I will give you a sequential program. You give me 100 ILP.
I'm going to say something else. I tell my students that if they see a really, really hard problem that they cannot solve, make it somebody else's problem. And this is precisely what we have been doing in the microarchitecture community. pushing the problem more and more toward the programmers. I think my friend has a point. We are asking programmers to solve the problems that we actually couldn't solve at our level. We made it their problem. If you look any program, I did. I mean, it's ugly. I mean, it's unbelievable. You cannot even see the algorithm in there. It's all filled with pragmas and everything. This is not the way to make people's lives.
Well, maybe see, it is not that we are unable, but maybe it is because it is impossible to solve at this level with this limited scope. For some of these parallel challenges, you have to have the global view of the whole algorithm with the data setting, how your data looks around, where it is in memory, how it moves. And on the microarchitecture, you do not have this information. So many things you cannot do, unfortunately.
So in my keynote yesterday, I was talking about our cache-conscious wavefront scheduling work and the more recent work, divergence work scheduling. In that case, we got the same basically performance as you get with all the fancy pragmas, as you call them, optimizations, by basically having the hardware detect the locality that the programmer was trying to manually optimize out of the program. So some of that stuff is there, but you need to do research into finding the things that the programmer is now being saddled with, because he said, well, I just wanted energy efficiency, and the programmer can figure out how to use it, right?
But
well, go ahead.
yeah, so I want to answer. So one of the main issues with the programming of today is that you have to really know a lot of the hardware that is underneath. Like you have to know, first of all, you have a GPU, you have to know how big the local memory is, how big...
Most people don't, most programmers don't.
They don't want to, they don't need to, shouldn't, but they have to.
They have, so they're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month. You know, so they clearly don't have to. They continue to be paid, and they clearly, and so they continue being paid, and they're continuing to not know the underlying.
No, the problem is here that they were the code under their paycheck, and this code is living on for decades in eternity. And the machines that have been run for this code like 10 years ago, so still need to be emulated in some way or other to like refit that code so that it's still performing. Because if you change some of those architectural details, then all of a sudden the code is not running that well. So what you do, you make it appear as if it would be the, well,
So, but if it's code that is actually important and runs like 90% of the cycles, the company has an economic incentive to rewrite it.
yeah, but there's a lot of stuff where you have your...
So I've heard from Google, they actually redo like a large portion of their code every 3 years. They rewrite the
Yeah,
kernel.
we can do that. There's a lot of like business code that was...
I guess if you're making a lot of money, you can do that.
So it's also the case that there are a lot of ninja programmers at Google that most, the gentleman had his hand up. You get this, go ahead.
You mean?
Yeah, I mean you.
My name is Matti Utila.
I will call on you even though you are wearing it. That's called a tie, is that right?
Right. Thanks. Well, there was a big competition between AMD and Intel for 7-8 years ago in order to increase the clock speed of the processors.
Yeah.
It was really pushing up the processor speed, and then 3-4 years ago there was times that there was more laptops and tablets, and somehow it looks like that we are still talking about 1 GHz up to 3 GHz processor for 4-5 years so far. And I know that there are those power problems, but what do you think?
That's what's driving the power problems.
Yeah, but what do you think in the future? If you're thinking about 10 years ahead, do you think that the competition, which now seems to be more in the how many CPUs you have in one CPU, goes back to that clock speed competition, that we will have something like gigahertz, 10 gigahertz, 20 gigahertz processors in the future?
So I'd like to see 10 gigahertz processors in the future, but in order to be able to do that, I'm going to have a lot of the stuff on that chip powered down, powered off. Right? That's driving the question I asked Trevor, is that if I can take what's on a chip and put it on many chips, then I can afford to run that chip at a higher frequency. It's strictly power, which is limited. There are chips that are in the lab, Intel, I'm sure AMD has them also, they're running at 5 gigahertz, it's just that they don't ship them because, because the power thing is just, a bomb.
But clock you cannot scale upward. Like, there was a time when like, everybody said, okay, we build the next 15 gigahertz processor or whatnot. But again, there was a power wall, and it of course, with the process technology, which was normally driving the clock increases, you also increase the leakage of the chips, right? The thing is, if you, for example, see what the leakage current is today, for example, is you have to really power off functional units to do that. And so eventually you run into this power wall that was already mentioned. So you have today, if you see smartphones, for example, what you're typically doing is you have fixed function blocks that are good in something at a very good power envelope and power performance per watt level. And you want to make sure that both these things are efficient in what they're doing, can be reused as much as you can, and also make sure that you can preserve that, for example, for the appropriate tasks. So one of the answers was, well, again, this is the platform of Baltimore's keynote, is this whole heterogeneous system architecture as a way for software, for example, to utilize that. Because everybody can build an SoC with awesome hardware. This is, I think, not the hard content, this is the hard power. But like programming it in a way that is actually useful for application vendors and application programmers is a hard part.
Right. From a pure technology point of view, I don't think you're going to see clock frequencies go up by a lot, but they will start creeping up more because you're going to see the voltage rail come down finally. It's been sort of flat for a number of technology nodes.
Voltage can't come down much further, can it?
Well, it can in these new FinFETs. Because, yeah, it's easy to control linkage in those. Yeah. So it gives you one shot, opportunity to.
But then you keep reminding me, one shots don't scale, right?
Yeah, they don't. But that's been the name of the business forever.
Yeah.
It's always been one fix after another.
You know, the ALU on the Pentium 4 ran, this is products that were shipped, ran at 7.6 gigahertz. The ALU, small piece of that chip.
On the what? On the Pentium?
Pentium 4.
Yeah, it's double
yeah.
clock, right.
The double, yeah, right. So I mean, it is possible, but the power thing is what needs to get in the way. They're pushing us to terminate this thing. Anybody have anything else before?
You can make the blessing.
Huh? What?
That's it. You can give the blessing and we'll go.
You're in charge. I'm just, I spent 10. Okay, good.
Right.